Hello, friends. David Vos here. Oh, boy, another beautiful day. Where do they keep coming from? It's wonderful, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Well, as per normal, I just turned this thing on. But today, I did have something really important in mind that I want to discuss with you. Because, and I think a lot of my subscribers will find this very, very interesting. But let's just spill the beans. What I want to talk about is when Jesus returns. First of all, a lot of people today, a lot of respected teachers are now saying that Jesus is just a symbol. And there's, that Christ in you, that's what it's talking about. It's just a parable, and there's no Jesus. Problem is that what good is a book if any of that book is false? What good would the rest of the book would be? So the New Testament says that Jesus doesn't just tell a story about a guy who came along. That could be a parable. But later, after the gospel, which is the story of Jesus and how he came to the world, after that, we've got the epistles, and these are certain individuals that Jesus supposedly chose. And here they are writing letters to us and telling us in detail how they're going to be taken up in, when this tabernacle is used up, and how we're all going to meet the Lord in the air. And so now this would have to be a very contrived, artfully contrived hoax. If you believe that Jesus doesn't exist, you couldn't believe in the apostles. So even the Nag Hammadi library that teaches all of this Sethian Gnosticism that we've certainly been talking about, and I think most of these people who believe that Jesus is just a parable and it doesn't really exist, I'm sure they love the Nag Hammadi library, that esoteric, that deep Gnostic literature, because it's the truth. But even those books have titles of the apostles. There's Mary Magdalene in that book. So this would be a very, very artfully contrived information. First of all, setting the date. You've got the king, or it starts off with Herod the Great, and it talks about Titus Vespasian destroying Jerusalem. It talks about Nero, Augustus Caesar, Pilate. These are historical figures. And we also, as we said before, and this isn't really what the video is about. Hold on one moment, because this is really going to get interesting. The video is going to be about something that happened the last moment we saw Jesus on the earth, and how he will return. But I want to just cover for a moment whether or not there is a Jesus. Because if he doesn't exist, then he's not going to return at all, right? And this whole thing about the coming of the Lord is really just one huge hoax. He's, oh, no, Dave, it's the coming of the inner Christ within us. Yeah, that is the primary result, because he is the firstborn of many brethren. But we, the brethren, cannot be born if we did not have someone who was born first, a leader, someone that we look up to, our Savior. Now, if the New Testament taught that there were 12 apostles who were all enlightened by this mysterious Christ within them, there was no human being, and they made that clear. I mean, it's not like the Bible's trying to deceive us. The book of Revelation doesn't say, look, I'm going to write some literal things, but it turns out it's a bunch of symbolic things. The book of Revelation starts off with, I, John, received from the angel's hands this message in signs and in symbols. And then he starts talking about women arrayed with the sun and the 12 stars. This is astrology. The Draco constellation and the centaurs that come up out of the bottomless pit. The entire New Testament is describing these stories that we hear as supposedly mythology, talked about in Greek mythology, where it says that Zeus is the god in heaven, but there's a god in hell named Hades, and he's got the key to Hades, and Poseidon's got a trident, and Zeus married Hera, and also was jealous, and because, well, he wasn't too jealous, but he wanted to, there was somebody that was after his people, and he was worried that this person was interested in his wife Hera. So he created this being called Nepheli. Nepheli, in Greek, that word means a cloud. Sometimes they use that word to describe a cloud. It's where we get in Latin nebula, or English is nebula, but nebula or something is in Latin. So this comes from the root there in Greek. Now, some have contended, there are scholars who do not agree, that it goes all the way back to the Hebrew Nephilim. Nepheli, Nephilim. There's no indication of that except that the Aramaic tradition is that Nephili, spelt differently, but probably from the same root. The Nephili was the constellation Orion. And the reason why it's important to understand all of this is because when Jesus went up into the cloud, the Nephili, he wasn't going into a rain cloud. He wasn't taken up from the earth into a cloud. But it had to do with Orion, which is the nebula, the Orion Nebula, because the book of Job and the Bible, throughout the Bible, talks about this Orion. But Revelation says that Jesus is Orion. He holds the 7 stars in his hand. Because Orion is the first of the months. It's March. The ram. Ram. Aries. Orion. Depending on the end of the word. Aries or Orion. Jisun. Jesus. Jesu. So Aries also means the month of March. And so the Aryan man is the man, Christ, the new creation. He is the shepherd of Anu, according to the Sumerians. Because, and you see that all the astrological signs go round and around. They go up on the horizon and they go down. They're defeated. They go down and they die, and then they're resurrected. But the gods that were in the North Pole, they never went down over the horizon, so they were the immortals. So when you understand all this, then you begin to look at the Old Testament, and it uses this word in the Old Testament that they translate in the Hebrew Kessel. But they're very sure, the rabbis and so forth, that literally is our star Orion. So Orion is the shepherd that he's got an archer. He's an archer as well, and he's shooting his bow, and he shoots the bull's eye. That's Taurus. And in Taurus is the Pleiades. Now, you start with the Pleiades and you start coming back towards the earth. You're going to come right on down. This is looking towards the south. You're going to come down from Alcyone, which is a star in the Pleiades, which is what Jehovah's Witnesses says is where God lives. And many people today are talking about the Pleiadians, right? These are the 7 sisters. This is the 7 bridesmaids that marry the Lord, right? Well, they're protected. And they're riding the bull. But the bull is taken them over and has got a hold of them, and somebody's got to deliver them. So Scorpio's the hunter, and there's the Sirius is the dog star. So that's the dog at its feet. You're looking down. The first star you'll see going towards the south is Sirius, and then you'll see Aldebaran, and then you'll see Alcyon, and it just goes down towards the center of the galaxy, down the swirling river of the Orion arm of the galactic star system that we're in. And the Bible calls that the regions or the chambers of the south. The north is the pole star. And that's where Christ is trying to get to the ascend to the pole star and ascend to his Father's throne. In Greek, we got all of this is talked about, Jason and the Argonauts. And he was going to get the golden fleece. Well, most people don't know what this golden fleece is. Well, this golden fleece glowed. It wasn't just gold. It was ore. Gold is ore, light. It was divine. The fleece is the lambskin. You cover yourself with a covering. In Hebrew, that's atonement, covering. So Yahweh sacrificed an animal and covered them because they were naked. So it represents this, the golden covering represents the immortality, the white robes that we're all going to get. So you start off at the beginning. In Hebrew, Kessel means the fool. In the deck of cards, you got the fool, the joker. And he's the guy that is this Orion, the conscious nature that goes down through the dark night. You know, the Joker, the Dark Knight, right? And so he's got to go through all these problems. Well, down there when the Virgin Mother gives birth to the child and she goes down into Egypt. Well, the Virgin is the Virgo, and then the next astrological sign is Libra. That goes down at the bottom of the wheel, and that is Scorpio and Sagittarius. And so Scorpions live in hell, and Sagittarius is the Sagittarian horse, or in the Greek mythology, it's the centaurs or whatever. Well, you see, the union of this Nephilim with this human produced the centaurs. And they were a ruthless, chaotic group of individuals. So the world became very chaotic, and their children were half horses and half men. In other words, we went down through the bottom of the wheel, and we evolved through the animal kingdom. The Apostle Paul says, first we were fish, then birds, then mammals, then men. And of course, once you get through this area called the bottomless pit, the abyss, then you go into the great ocean, Oceanus, and Poseidon was ruling over there. And you've got January, or John, who is the Baptist. And all of this is what the Bible is talking about that we never knew. So so it's very difficult, because not only do you have to understand all this mythology, but we got pieces and parts of it written in different languages. Oh, Jupiter, Zeus. Oh, Zeus is Enlil. Oh, Enlil is, but Ea, Enki's Yahweh. And it's like, this has become a real Rubik's Cube to put all of this ancient stuff together. And the thing of it is that's the way it was designed, because the book of Daniel, it says, in the book of Daniel, it says, seal up the book. In the time of the end, knowledge shall increase, and the book shall be opened. Then the wise shall understand, but no wicked one shall understand. So in the last couple hundred years, we've been digging up cuneiform and hieroglyphs and so forth. And we have Nag Hammadi Library in 1945, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, 1947. And then we got the Rosetta Stone that helped us understand and translate and interpret the hieroglyphs. And the cuneiform have been understood because of this. And so we began to translate all this stuff, and we found out that our whole Old Testament is only a piece an excerpt out of the esoteric wisdom. The Sumerians and the Babylonians and all these, they talked about Adam, and they talked about all these individuals. All the religions of the world, it's not all different religions. Every religion in the face of the earth is talking about this. It's history. It's real. So Jesus didn't say, oh, Tartarus, where the giants were imprisoned by Zeus, that's just a fairy tale. No, in Greek mythology, the river Styx divided the Elysian fields from Tartarus, where they were tortured in flames. And between the Elysian fields, or paradise, and hell was this river with this gorge, and it was the river Styx. Well, Jesus told us that that's true. He says the rich man died and went to hell, and in torments he lifted up his eyes, and he saw on the other side of this great gorge, this river, he saw paradise and Abraham sitting at this banquet and those that were banqueting with him. And he says nobody can cross over. Well, in the ancient mythology, all of these things were real. This isn't just mythology. It's a mythology to preserve the story. The symbols teach a wide variety of things, spiritual, deep spiritual things, as well as real historical things. We all came from the center of the galaxy, down in our past. And we're making our way out towards the outer. Just like every cell division, it starts off one and then it divides, and then they go off and they divide, and you make more galaxies and more solar systems, and it just creates, and you go forward. This could take millions of years. I mean, we have all of eternity to progress. But the stars are in the Bible. The stars are, the children of the Lord. And it's talking about the people on the stars. And it says, we once were the morning stars that sang together and clapped their hands for joy at the founding of the earth. So there's a lot more to all of this story, and we can't go into every little detail in this video. But what I want to focus on is this Nephili. Because the Greek word Nephili, many times in the New Testament, is just translated cloud. And you have the feeling that when Jesus left the earth, he just went up into a cloud and that was it. But it seems very strange that the Bible would say, listen, Jesus went into a cloud. That's very important. And he will come back out of a cloud just the way he left in a cloud. Well, if the word means cloud, then it's very difficult to understand, especially since this cloud, as we're going to find out, we're going to read some scriptures, comes down and envelops them. In several instances, it just envelops them. And then there was a cloud that followed Moses, and they were all baptized and enveloped in the cloud. Well, we need to know what this cloud is. It has to do with mythology. It has to do with knowledge that we've lost. Because when Jesus mentioned Tartarus, we wouldn't know anything about it if we didn't know Greek mythology. If Jesus mentioned hell and heaven and all of these things, and his father in heaven, Uranus, we wouldn't know anything about it except for Greek, the father of the gods, Uranus. And so, let me show you, I want to read a couple of things. This is just going to blow your mind, because there is more to the story of Jesus than you ever would have dreamed. And it's important that we understand this for several reasons. One, we got to realize that Jesus is a real person. His apostles were real people. He was the firstborn among many brethren. And he became a human being so that he could sympathize with our own weaknesses, to become a priest that was different than just human priests that weren't better, that we couldn't really save us. We needed somebody to really save us. And this world is a very big illusion, and everybody's dying, and it's a very terrible bondage down here on this planet, especially when we're under this old covenant and we're all being taught to be slaves, and an eye for an eye and tooth for tooth. And so we're looking for a real savior. And Jesus promised us he will return. But not only does is it important that we understand that there's a real Jesus? But it's also probably important to understand just, what he is. I mean, not just that he's a person, but that he looks like us and that he's going to return in a body like us. It says that we don't know what he looks like now, but we know that when he appears, we shall be like him. Because he was resurrected, and he said, it's very odd because we're going to read some scriptures because there's a few verses and words in there that we just pass over and we never notice. One is the fact that that when Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration, it says he got bright. And it says several places that uses this word bright. Exceedingly bright. For people and angels and clouds that seem to envelop them in this bright cloud. What is this cloud that's so bright that the Greek word that it uses there is photon, light. In other words, a light cloud. We're going to show you some scriptures. Hold on. All right, Matthew 17:5. Now look at this. We've all seen this before, but let's really take a look at this. Because we're going to find something out. It's going to literally change our whole perception of what we've been thinking here. It says, while yet, now see, I've got this in the interlinear so that you can see the Greek words there. So in English it says, while yet he was speaking, behold, a cloud bright overshadowed them. And behold, a voice came out of the cloud. Now, I don't know what this cloud is. Notice there the Greek word 3507, the middle of the page left, and it's Nephili. Nephili. We get the word, Latin is nebula. So we get the word nebula. So the root of the word means a mass. A cloud mass, or it doesn't have to be a cloud in the sense of, fluffy white cloud. Anything that's a mass. A bunch of marbles in one area. A multitude. If you look at the dictionary of the meaning of the original root, it just meant a whole mass of things congregated in one spot. And so it came to mean clouds, but there's quite a few reasons why it came to mean, why they used that word as a cloud, because it was also something that the Greeks believed in their mythology about this nymph that Zeus made, which really had, these things in mythology mean many different things. And if we don't really understand the mythology, we're really not sure what they're talking about. So when Jesus says, you'll not come out of Sheol or Tartarus until you paid the farthing, how do we know what he's talking about unless we understand the ancient esoteric wisdom? So at first glance, you say, well, okay, they translated a cloud, Dave. It's got to be a cloud. Well, we're going to show you where the Bible uses the same word for a multitude of people and for other things. But let's just say it's a cloud for a moment. All right, what do you do with the next word? Bright. Well, that word is photine or a photo. It means light. Very, very bright. And then the next word, what do you do with that? It overshadowed them. It engulfed them. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have seen a lot of clouds in my lifetime. But I've never seen a cloud that engulfed me that I thought was something so amazing that I needed to say, hey, the Lord had this happen to him, and this very same event, whatever this thing is, this bright, shining bright, like the light from heaven that overshadowed them and engulfed them, that this event is so significant that he will go, or he will come in the very same manner that you saw him go. He will come with the clouds, and every eye will see him. Why is Jesus going to come with the clouds? And why is this cloud so bright? And why are they engulfed in it? Now, we're going to show you that this is not just some, haphazard little phrase, but let's continue here. Matthew 24:30. The Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. You see, this is something that's like a biblical doctrine. Like, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I mean, this is a literal thing that we're supposed to remember. He's coming on the clouds, and don't forget it. With all the power and the glory. What? He's coming with power and glory, but he's coming on a cloud? What is this cloud? The Nephilim, the Nephili, some goddess in Greek mythology. What is this? Well, Mark 9, verse 7. It says, and there came a cloud, Nephili, see the top where it says Nephili, overshadowing them, and there came a voice out of the Nephilis. This is the son of me, or this is my son, in whom I am well pleased. All right. Now we got voices coming out of the cloud. And it sounds a little bit like the cloud that overshadowed the Israelites we'll get to that. And there was a voice out of that cloud, and there was a rainbow all around, and there was a pavement work that led to the throne. And as we're going to find out, Moses went into the cloud, and so does Jesus go into the cloud. And not only that, friends, but you're going to go into the cloud. Yeah, it says in the latter days, we'll all be caught up with him in the cloud. Okay. We better take a little gander at this, a little closer look, because this seems like it might be something that we haven't even imagined heretofore. Luke chapter 9 says, and it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings, he took Peter and John and James and went up to the mountain to pray. And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered. His raiment, or his clothes, were white. Oh, not just white, but glistening. And behold, there talked with him 2 men. They were Moses and Elias. That's Elijah, who appeared in glory. Oh boy, this is the appearance of glory. This is what we're going to be like. We're all going to be glorified. And spake of his decease, which he should accomplish at Jerusalem. But Peter and they that were with him were heavy with sleep, and when they were awake, they saw his glory, and the 2 men that stood with him. And it came to pass, as they departed from him, Peter said unto Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here, and let us make 3 tabernacles, 3 tents, 3 houses, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elias. Not knowing what he said, while he thus spake, there came a cloud and overshadowed them. And they feared as they entered into the cloud. They entered into the cloud, my friends. And there came a voice out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son, hear ye him. And when the voice was past, Jesus was found alone. Well, they went in. Moses and Elijah stayed in there, and they came out. Moses and Elijah went back in this cloud and took off. And this was a bright, glorified, bright. I mean, they're describing this thing as glory. I don't know what kind of light is like glory, but there you go. A very powerful thing. They went into the light. They went into this cloud. Now think about it. If this were a normal cloud that Jesus went into when he was raised up, when he ascended into the cloud, and so as he left, he shall return. If that was just a cloud, it's just, he could have just ascended into the blue sky. maybe the cloud is just saying, yeah, well, he was taken up and he was caught up from their sight. In other words, they're just mentioning the cloud because it happened to be there, and it obscured their vision. So he was, he disappeared. It was just kind of a convenient little cloud the Lord brought by so that they couldn't see him go. But wait a minute, every eye will see him. This is not just a cloud. Not every eye is going to see a cloud, right? Over here in Oklahoma or in Jerusalem or wherever it might land. But this was a bright cloud that engulfed them. And they went in. So I don't think it's just some ordinary cloud. I don't think Jesus went into a cloud at all, friends. Because I don't think you can enter into a cloud. What do you say? What do you guys think? You think you can enter into a cloud? You think there's going to be a voice coming out of a cloud? What kind of a voice? Well, the Lord could do that. The Lord could make a voice come out of, but it's always a voice coming out of a cloud. And this cloud's always something very, very odd. So we got to figure out what this cloud is. Because this word cloud is used in some very odd ways. And it's obvious it's not a cloud. Look at this. Acts chapter 1. And when he had spoken, verse 9, and when he had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up. He was just taken up, Dave. Just up. He just went up. Oh, okay. And a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel. Why is he always wearing white? I understand it's symbolic of purity, but they're always wearing white. You ain't never seen an angel wearing black. Maybe it's because they're not really wearing garments, but they're glowing because they're glorified beings. And so it says, they stood by him in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. Why is this important for them to tell us in the book of Acts? The apostles tell us this is very important. They tell us this over and over again. Jesus is always coming in the clouds. The same way he left in a cloud, he's coming back in a cloud. And not only that, we're going to leave in a cloud. I find that to be very, very intriguing. Because this cloud is pretty famous. And it goes all the way back to the days of the Old Testament. Because there was a cloud there too. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, the Apostle Paul says, Brothers, all of us were under the cloud. I'm reading this in some weird interlinear. So, all of us passed through the cloud or under the cloud, and we're all passed through the sea. Okay. So, the children of Israel, he says, he's calling them us. This is what I keep telling you guys, is that we don't notice these things in the Bible. We were there in the days of Moses, and we were there in the days of Christ, and we're all here now. That was us. Elijah returned, and that was John the Baptist. That was Elijah. And we're all here. And some say he's of Jeremiah or one of the prophets, right? Some say he's Elijah. Well, because they knew these guys were going to return. They were just trying to figure out who's who. But you see, we were familiar with this cloud because they also went into the cloud. They went in there. And if I had time to show you all the verses on that, you'd see that it had looked like gold plated and a glass dome over it. And there was this lightning shooting out of it, and it had wheels, and there was this pavement of basalt that led like a road that led up to the entrance, and they went into the cloud. And Moses went in unto the Lord and spoke to him. And there was just like a loudspeaker that spoke from the cloud, right? Down to the people. And they were all scared and trembling. And do not let anyone touch the mountain or they will be stoned. It was this huge event. But let's read on a little bit more, because this isn't just something that we all did once or twice. We were all standing there with Christ and we looked up into the sky and we saw this thing. We knew what it was at the time, probably, but yeah, we've been deceived. The devil's come down to us and he's been lying to us. And now we don't even know who Jesus is or whether he's real or whether, it's Polaroid or real, right? So, but you see, what we're going to find out is that we're going to see the cloud again. You and I are going to go up into this cloud. We need to know what it is. It says in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, it says that we'll be caught away in the clouds. Look at the word nephilis. That's the word for cloud, nebula. For the meeting of the Lord in the air. And so always we shall be with the Lord. Now it's calling it, we're going to meet him. Okay, we got a rendezvous with the Lord. We're going to meet him. And he's coming in this cloud. How is the Lord actually going to come? How are we going to go in the air and meet him? That's what we want to find out. Because this is not just some ordinary cloud. I mean, look at this. Revelation chapter 1. Behold, he is coming with the clouds. And we'll see him, every eye, and those who pierced him. Those who pierced him, those scribes and Pharisees down there, those bad people that are still running the world, they're all going to notice, they're all going to see it. It ain't going to be like, oh, well, we'll have to deal with these bad people because they won't realize that we're with the Lord. Like, this is going to be a big thing. Everybody's going to know when this happens. That's why we're not supposed to look for false prophets, and we don't believe when the Antichrist says, come out to meet me, because we know that when the Lord comes, we're going to go up in a cloud. And now, that's at the end of the tribulation, by the way. But maybe if we're going to go into a cloud and every eye will see this event, well, clouds are pretty obscure, I mean, dark clouds, we're all going to go up into the cloud. We won't see anybody going into a cloud. If it was an actual cloud, you wouldn't see that, right? Because they would just disappear. But this is something different. Look at Revelation chapter 10. I saw still another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud. And a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun. His feet like pillars of fire. He had a little book open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land, and he cried with a loud voice as when a lion roars. When he cried out, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Kaboom! What kind of cloud makes... Well, okay, clouds make thunder. Okay. But there's this angel that's clothed with the... He's in the cloud. And I was about to write, but I heard the voice from heaven saying to me, seal up the things which the 7 thunders uttered and do not write them. The angel who I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised up his hand to heaven, swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heaven and the things that are in it, and the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer. But in the days of the sounding of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, the mystery of Theos would be finished, as he declared to his servants the prophets. Well, you see, if we're going to leave the earth in a cloud, then this cloud's pretty important. But you see, again, this cloud's not no ordinary cloud. I mean, literally, this thing has got pillars of fire in it. Okay, maybe this is some symbolic description of a cloud, but I don't know why the Bible is getting so into this description of this cloud. Haven't we all seen clouds and thunder? And I'm not sure we've seen a cloud with pillars of fire, but yeah, okay. Or maybe this is something a little different. And, I don't even think you understand. The word cloud doesn't even mean cloud all the time. We're going to find out what this word actually means. Revelation 11, now after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered in them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them, and they heard a loud voice from heaven saying, come on up here. And they ascended to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. Right? If you went into a cloud, you would be obscure. But these guys, they went into a cloud, and their enemies saw them, because this cloud's bright, and it's got pillars of fire, and there's thunders coming out of this cloud. And in the same hour, there was a great earthquake. Whoa! And 1/10 of the city fell in the earthquake. 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave up glory to God. Oh my goodness, the thunders is going to shake the earth. This is one big ship or something here. The seventh angel with a loud voice saying, the kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Father. Wow! Verse 14, then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time is come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle into the earth, and the earth was reaped. Another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, and he also had a sharp sickle. And another came out of the altar, who had the power over fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust in the sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth. See, this is the harvest. Here's where the blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles. Woo, buddy! This is something else. Well, it's obvious there's a lot of symbolic talk in here. Because like I've said, the book of Revelation, the whole Bible has got symbolic talk. There's a lot of literal things in it. There's a lot of meanings there's like layers of meanings to all of this. But one thing we're told very sure, that Jesus is coming back on this cloud. And this is like the whole thing. We really need to understand this cloud, because when he comes, it's over. The mystery is finished. And he's going to reap. It's the great harvest. And what's that? The end of the world. Right? The angels are the reapers. So this book of Revelation is talking about the end of our society and the world as we know it. The earth shall be burned up with fervent heat. The stars shall fall from heaven. The mountains shall fall. All the trees shall be burned up. Because this world, the heavens and the earth that are now, are reserved for fire and the destruction of ungodly men. And that is what the Bible teaches. This world, the society we live in, and all of the principalities and powers, and this whole dark episode that we've been going through is over. And there will be a new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. But what does it mean, a new heavens and a new earth? What does it mean that Jesus is going to return? All of this is, it can be as literal can be. And yet it still seems to always have some mystery to it. Because now Jesus is literally coming the same way in which you saw him leave, he will return. But he's coming on a cloud. Now we've got to decide not only what the cloud may represent, but also what does the word mean? Because the word, there's scriptures where the word has to do with a multitude of people. So if we look at Hebrews chapter 12, we get a really, I think, a kind of a clue as to what this cloud is. If you look the word up, it literally, they say it can mean a multitude of people. Well, here in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, it says, therefore also we, such a great, having encompassing us a cloud of witnesses. In other words, it says, therefore, we having such a great cloud of witnesses encompassing us. There's that word encompassing. We're engulfed That, now, this is getting very odd, because this cloud is nothing. This cloud has nothing to do with a cloud. This has to do with a whole. Chapter 11 of Hebrews talks about all these men of faith that we have as a testimony. And we have all these individuals that gave us this great testimony. Such a great cloud of testifiers. Why would you call these people a cloud? Because the word doesn't mean a cloud all the time. It may have the same root. In other words, a cloud may be a congregation or a collection of photons or light, or no, actually, water bubbles or whatever. So it's a nebula, yes. But we got a nebula of witnesses, or in other words, a mass, a whole mass of them, a collected. You can see them all collected together as a group. And so the word doesn't just mean a cloud in the sky. It means a group of individuals, a crowd, a multitude of people. Remember that Jesus is always coming, and he shall bring the saints with him. Well, if saints are all coming in the sky, and we're going to go into this cloud of witnesses, we're going to go in there, and there's a pavement of gold and a basalt and a dome and thunder's coming out of this thing, and it's pillars of fire. What could this thing be? What's going to bring all the saints to the earth? Could it be the city of the living deity, the great multitude which no man could number, and God sitting in the center on his throne? And around the throne is the 144,000 stones that make up the temple. And the temple, the New Jerusalem, comes down out of heaven. If you look at the dimensions, it's huge. It's like almost as big as the moon. That indeed would be something that every eye would see. If the New Jerusalem came down out of heaven, the saints came down and we were gathered and we went into the city with them. What is this city that flies through heaven? Could it be a ship that hovered over Israel and with a loudspeaker talked to them down on the ground? Did Moses get beamed up into the ship? Oh man, that's what it's starting to look like to me. But there's another twist to the story. Because as we said, this Nephilim goes back to this Greek mythology, this nymph that is in the form of Hera, Zeus's wife, that seduces a man and creates these half horse, half men, centaurs, which the Bible says are these horses that come up out. They have horses with the faces of men come up out of the bottomless pit. That's Scorpio and Sagittarius down at the bottom of the wheel. Yeah, we go down and it almost overcomes us. But what is this whole thing? It's the story of the stars. So look at this. What you see there on the page, if you look where it's got yellow, the constellation Aries, the ram, Aries, Arion, Orion, remember Kessel, the regions of the south. Jesus had to go down there. It says, can you bind them? Jesus went down there and bound those principalities, powers, and dominions. It's going to take him a while. He had to leave and go somewhere. Well, he went down into the bottom of the wheel. 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, the Bible says. And this is what the story of Jason the Argonaut's about. They're chasing after the golden fleece, the ram's fleece, the golden immortal life. Because somebody's down there in hell and they need help. And so the ram is thought to be the ram which carried Phrixus and Helle through the Hellespont. The Hellespont is the ocean, and that's, Aquarius, Pisces. They had to go through this, baptized in the water by John or January. And these same individuals are all the same people in Greek mythology. Jason actually is Jesus. Jisun or Jason or Jisu or Jesus. And of course, Hercules is a symbol of the great strong man that saves holds up the world. And you've got Perseus on the white horse. This is all allusions to something. See, what is this ram. It's the Orion who's got the 7 stars, and he's the archer, and he's the shepherd of Anu. He's the son of God. He comes to what? Save Andromeda? To marry the bride? To have the great wedding? But in order to do that, he's got to conquer the beast that's in the bottom of the sea. So, the story of Nepheli, this nymph, is the story of mankind getting stuck down at the bottom with all these centaurs and monsters and coming out from this illicit union of the flesh. You know, the Bible talks about the harlot that rides the beast. There's an illicit relationship that mankind has had. And we went through thousands of years under the darkness. But evidently, this is literally connected to some stars that you can see in the southern hemisphere as you go from Sirius to Aldebaran to Alcyon and the Pleiades. The 7 sisters, those are the 7 stars that Orion has in his hands. Well, Orion happens to be the first of the months, Aries, the ram. And we're going to ride the ram. We're going to be protected by the shepherd and the dog, Sirius, at the feet of Orion. We're going to be protected, and what we're going to do with this? Well, we're going to rise on the horizon. Christ is the Horus that rises on the horizon and conquers the beast. And then the wedding happens right up there in the next age, because it's a summer wedding, right? So you come out of the winter and the sun comes out and the summer comes, and you're climbing and pursuing and going up the hill, and you meet the Taurus bull, which plows the field and gets us ready for the harvest and the great feast of Pentecost and the great wedding. This is all what the Bible is talking about. It's exactly the same thing in our Bible as in Greek mythology. So, what are the Nephel? Well, they are the ones who end up giving birth to the half men, half gods, the giants, the chaotic, scorpions. The Revelation says the bottomless pit was opened, hell, Tartarus, and these Sagittarian horse-like things with men's faces came out, and scorpions, Scorpio, and they harmed men for 5 months. Yeah, because after Libra comes Scorpio, and then you've got 5 months until the coming of Christ, or the birth, the resurrection in spring. So this is what this is talking about. And there is no way to get around that the entire New Testament is about Greek mythology, Sumerian mythology. We call it mythology, and we think that means it's a myth, that it doesn't, sometimes you use the word fable. Fables aren't always completely literal, but that doesn't mean that the fable's not based on some kind of reality. It wouldn't be much if it were, or if it weren't. So I think that there's a little bit more to this than what we're yet getting here. Because what we've got now is Jesus coming back on a spaceship, because that looks pretty apparent. Jesus is really coming back. We're all going to really... Because if Jesus isn't coming back, then we're not going to leave, right? We're not going to meet him in the air. We're not going to be gathered at the last trump. You got to take this literal to some extent, guys, or else what are we reading here? So, then you got to ask yourself, what does Nephilim have to do with Nephilim? They don't seem to be the same word, but there's certainly some parallels to the Aramaic word Nephilia, because that's also has something to do with this Orion, the Orion constellation. Remember, that's the spring. That has to, and the reason why it's always Orion, because the shepherd is the resurrection of Christ, and then he goes forth and saves his bride, and that's what this whole story is about. So we've got a ship and we've got mythology. How does that tie in? All right, let's say Jesus literally left the earth. And let's say there are some literal principalities, powers, and dominions that may live on other planets or something. Let's say that there really were Anunnaki, the gods who came to the earth and manipulated us and imprisoned us and made bad laws and made us slaves. We've talked about this in many of my videos. The Nephilim, who had relations with the daughters of men. Who were they? Well, we've talked about in the Sumerian tablets, it's very closely related to Sirius. It's always closely related to the Pleiades and Aldebaran, the bullseye, and Orion, because this was the main hero, basically, of the story. Like Jason and the Argonauts, this was the main hero. This was the fool, the Kessel in Hebrew, the fool, which is you. And you're going to have these experiences. You're going to go down into the world. So, if Jesus then actually died and went into hell like the Bible says he did, where is hell? It's at the bottom of the wheel. Where's the bottom of the wheel? What do we go down to China? I mean, if we're talking, it's weird how we get this thing in our mind, the circle, and we think, well, that's the earth and the bottom of the wheel, because we're thinking summer and winter. But you see, it's bigger than just the earth. It's the whole sphere of all existence. And everything goes in cycles. So you've got the darkness, you got the light, you got the winter, you got the summer. But it's also kind of literal, because on the earth, if you look into the northern hemisphere, you're looking towards the Polaris, the throne, the immortal deities who've been raised up and don't go down over the horizon anymore. And the astrological signs which go up and down. And this is the children of men going up and down. But the Savior, Orion, comes up and he conquers that hell. He comes up out of that hell and he saves his bride. So maybe there's a plan here. Okay, so now that's coming out of the southern hemisphere there. Because Orion is towards the south. It tells you that in the book of Job. And it says, who can bind the bands of the Pleiades and the chains of the chambers of the south, the almost like a prison? Why would it be a prison? Why is it that somebody's got to go down there and bind him, right? The Kessel. As we said, in Hebrew, that's what they call Orion. But it means the fool. Why? Because there's this carnal nature, we humans in our state that we're in right now, we've got to go through the wheel of rebirth. We've got to go down to the bottom of the wheel. And we're going to be bound in this Tartarus. We're going to go through these sufferings. And the children that we spawn are these half horses, sexual kind of beings, and lustful and lower forms that are half man and half animal. This is the evolution at the bottom of the wheel that we'll overcome. We'll conquer it. The fool was bound, but he doesn't play the fool long, because he plays many characters. Hercules, he's Perseus, he's Dionysius, right? He's Jason in the Argonauts. He's got all kinds of characters that he plays. But when we die, where do we really go? Do we literally go to China at the bottom of the earth? No. Do we go to the bottom of the solar system? Or maybe that's Saturn? You know, we live on Saturn while we're in hell? No, where's hell? Well, hell is suffering, a carnal type of nature, an earthly existence where we pay for things that we do wrong. And so we're not in the heaven where we don't go through this wheel of rebirth, where we're immortal. We're not yet immortal. We're still in this eternal flame that's purging, and we're going up and down in the resurrection, up and down, death and life, the cycles of rebirth. And so Orion goes around and around and around. He goes down to the bottom wheel, comes up, and he's resurrected on the cross, from where the sun sets on the horizon is a cross. And where the sun rises in the spring is a cross. And so the sun just sits there on the horizon for a moment, almost as if, it was motionless. And it sort of walks on the water, because Christ can walk on the water. And then it overcomes that world and shines in its glory. But is there something real about this idea of one area of the sky being the south? Yes, I think so, because if you look from the earth towards the south, you're literally looking down the corridor of the Milky Way, down the Orion arm. It's a swirling arm that comes from the center of the galaxy. Isn't it possible that there were some beings that our New Testament uses the Greek word archon? We translate it principalities. Jesus went to hell to conquer the principalities, powers, dominions, and lords. For this system of things, the cosmos, to be gone, and a new heavens and a new earth to be established with his rule. So there were some principalities, some archons. They're the wild beast that the Bible talks about, right? So you've got the three houses from Libra, Sagittarius, or Scorpio and Sagittarius, and then the other three, which is Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Those 6 houses are at the bottom of the wheel, and that is Tartarus and the sea, and that's the abyss, and that's where Yahweh ruled. Iya Inki, and his house was in the Abyssios. And Book of Revelation chapter 9 says that the angel of the bottomless pit had the key to the bottomless pit. He had the key to death and Hades. Christ had to go down there and wrangle that key out of his hand and conquer those principalities. I suspect that Jesus may literally have a real ship. And these beings, these Anunnaki, these aliens, these powerful gods that would look a lot like humans and had relations with the daughters of men and kept us as slaves. I suspect that Jesus had to come down here and partake of flesh and blood, as did his brethren. Not only to overcome the law, but when he died, he probably went down into a place where these beings really did exist and literally took authority from them. This perhaps explains a little bit better why Jesus had to leave the earth and return. He says, I'm going to a far country. I put everything under your guys' control. You guys be the light of the world. I got to go away, and I'm going to come back again. And it took him 2,000 years? Well, we don't know all the details, but I do believe there was a literal battle. It says in the Bible that Michael the archangel battled with the devil and his demons, and there was a war in heaven, and they were thrown out. I think there's a real war going on, and it's a spiritual battle, because it's not in the physical realm, and that's on Earth. But these other planets are other dimensions. I'm not going to get into that real deep, because we're already way over an hour. But I think that whets your appetite. I believe that Jesus literally must have left in a mass that held a multitude of people. He's going to bring the saints with him in a mass that you can enter into, that shines like the great brightness. And it uses the Greek word photons, a mass of photons. I really think, if you notice, when Christ went up the Mount of Transfiguration, and it says he was glorified, or it says his appearance was altered, I really believe it had to do with his immortal energy. Once you partake of that, you go through a change, like we're going to be changed, it says, in a twinkling. How? We're going to put on what? The golden fleece. We're going to put on this outer golden light suit. And I think we do that with awakened consciousness. Okay, receiving authority and an opening of the inner eye, the energizing of those chakras, and that twin flame being ignited on your head. Jesus said, if that eye be simple, your whole body shall be full of light. I don't think he was playing around. I don't think that's a symbol. I think we'll be beings of light. I think we will be clothed with light. And that means that as a light being, we can just fly off in a ball of light and be somewhere else through a wall or whatever. We can literally, as Jesus could, walk through walls and walk on the water. We will be an immortal. We'll have no more blood because Jesus was resurrected and he had flesh and bones. A spirit hath not flesh and bones, as you see that he did have. And we'll have flesh and bones. We'll be like him when he returns. But not blood, because flesh with its blood will not inherit the kingdom of our Father. So it's a whole nother immortal light realm. The world's going to be glorified. The glory of the world will shine. It'll be exalted and energized in a higher frequency. And I think that there will literally, that the ship that Jesus is on isn't literally a tin can propelled by rocket fuel, but it's a ship that is literally alive, a creature that is like, on this world, we ride horses and things, you know? I mean, there's a way to travel, and it's through mind, and it's through enlightenment, and using the forces, communicating with other light forces that assist us. So this ship is some sort of conglomeration, nebula, cloud of people in one place as light beings. And when he returns, it will be so bright, every eye will see him. So it's like a ship, but I think it's even more than that. And I think maybe we'll even talk about this further in another video, because we want to get a little deeper into exactly what this might be. Because there's quite a few verses. We can go back to the Old Testament, see how Moses went up into the cloud and all the descriptions, and there's the Ezekiel description. And there's even more there in the book of Revelation that we could kind of go over, and it would really enlighten us on this. But friends, we're literally going to be exalted here very soon and receive our light bodies. For those of you who are ready, I believe 140 and 4,000, and they cannot harm one hair of our heads. I don't think this is not for us. The wrath is not for us, friends. So lift up your heads. Your deliverance is getting nigh. Friends, I'm going to go ahead and go, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Please have a great day.